In this video we're going to take a look at the fourth machine from tier 2 of the HackTheBox starting point, and I'm already connected to the VPN here. You can see it's the VIP VPN this time because the last two boxes are VIP only. I've already got the machine up and running. You can see the IP address here, which I've added to the host file with the hostname included.hackthebox so that we don't need to remember the IP or copy and paste it every time we want to run a scan and stuff like that. So let's close that down. Let's go and... Oh, I didn't start an Nmap scan here. The reason being is it's asking us what service is running over UDP, and typically what we do here is we say Nmap, service enumeration, default scripts, all ports, and then the host name or the IP address. The problem is, if we do that, it's only going to scan all TCP ports, and we're going to miss that UDP port it's asking us for. So we could say here -su to specify we want to run a UDP scan, but then it won't scan any TCP ports, it'll only do UDP, and it will do it very, very slowly. Nmap's very slow in general, but particularly when it comes to UDP ports. So what I'm going to do is demonstrate how I typically approach challenges, or boxes whenever they're released on HackTheBox, and that is to run a mass scan on all TCP and UDP ports, and then based on the ports that are found to be open, we feed those into Nmap for a more detailed scan. So you can actually see here I have a script which I put together a couple of years ago during my OSCP preparation. So you can see here, save your result from Masscan in mscan.txt, and then you can run this to feed those results into Nmap. We can also do this, you can see this is set up to do multiple items. So on the OSCP you have a network and you might have several boxes that you want to run this scan on. So this isn't too important for us, but just to bear in mind that you can use this to scan networks as well as single systems. Okay, so let's go and try it out. As usual, I have a bash alias set up here, so I'm going to grep masscan from bash aliases, and you can see that if we run mscans with the IP address, and it does have to be the IP address for masscan, it doesn't take a host name. If we run that, it's basically going to run all TCP ports, all UDP ports, IP that we provide, and it's going to do it on rate 1000. So sometimes due to the speed that Masscan runs at, it might miss some ports depending on the network configuration, the firewall and things like that. You might need to lower the rate if you're missing some ports, or just use Nmap. And the adapter is set to ton0, which is our VPN adapter, and we're going to send the results then to the mscan.txt. As we saw here, that will be then used to build up a list of ports for a more detailed Nmap scan. So let's start running that. You can see once it's finished, we're just going to run nmaps, and that's going to run gen nmap.py, which is going to create that file that we're talking about, and it's going to feed that file into Nmap with a more detailed scan, which is going to run service enumeration. Actually, this is a bit overkill, I didn't really need all of these options here. Another thing to mention, while that scan is running, what I would typically do is go and have a look to see what we have on port 80. So provide the IP here, let's actually change that to included.hackthebox, and if there is a HTTP service, which there normally is, I would also then go and run some additional scans. We can run Nikto-host and give it the URL. This will tell us what server version's running. It'll look for some default files and directories. It'll look for some vulnerabilities as well. I do see a lot of people saying that Nikto's quite outdated and doesn't really find much, but I'm just in a habit of kind of running it anyway. I don't think it really takes too much time just to initiate the scan, and if it finds something, that's great. If not, we've not really lost any time. I also run Gobuster, so I have an alias set up for this as well. Let me grep out gobuster./.bash aliases. And this is just an alias to run Gobuster in directory busting mode with the standard word list and the URL we provide. So we can do Gobusters, pass in that URL, and then any extensions that we want to test for as well. So I normally do PHP, HTML, and TXT. But obviously if you see it's an ASP or ASPX site or something else, you can change those extensions as required. Okay, so the mass scan completed. It didn't take too long. Does it have the... It took about 3 minutes total to scan all TCP and all UDP ports, and then if we have a look at our mass scan file, we've actually only got the HTTP port, which isn't good. Okay, So it didn't actually find any UDP ports. Let's try and let's do just nmap then. We'll need to do sudo if we're doing a UDP scan, and I'm not going to do all ports because it is really slow. I'm just going to do the top 1000 ports, and then we'll give it included.HackTheBox. I'm also not running any service enumeration or default scripts or anything. We'll just find out what ports are open first of all, and then we can worry about that stuff afterwards. Let's see if it gives us an idea how long this is going to take. Okay, 7 minutes remaining, 7.5 minutes remaining, 8 minutes remaining. Okay, what I'm going to do, I'm going to cancel that, I'm going to run it again, and I'm going to do verbose mode, just so that any ports that are actually open, hopefully we'll see them as they come out. Okay, and our Nikto is still running, so it did find some default directories. We've got an outdated version of Apache, so we might want to go and do search exploits, Apache 2.4.29. Okay, and then we can have a look through these and see if any of the versions match up with any vulnerabilities. While the scans are running, we can also go and have a look through the website, see if there's anything of interest. Clicking on these links doesn't do anything. We've got just some lorem ipsum filler text down here. Links don't go anywhere either, and the same at the bottom, so there's really not much to look at. Although we did have that Gobuster scan, which it seems to be, I think this is coming back with a lot of false positives now, but we have these 200 OK ones anyway for license.txt, home.php, there's an index.php, and we could have a look at the source code here as well, just to see maybe there's some comments in here, maybe there's some files or directories that have been commented out. But actually the first thing we should have noticed, you can see here file equals home.php at the top. If we reload the page, it automatically redirects to included.HackTheBox with file equals home.php. So this is indicative of a file inclusion vulnerability, local file inclusion, whereby essentially there's some PHP code which is set to include this file that's provided. And if there's no restrictions placed on this, we might be able to access files on the system of our choosing. So let's try and put etc password. Okay, we need our HTTP there as well, otherwise it goes to a Google search, and we do get that back. So you can have a look in Burp Suite. The layout should be a little bit better formatting. You can see here TFTP, Mike we've got as a user, so this can give us an idea where we might want to go next. We could also try, I mean, if you come across this on a box, something you might want to do is have a look for a LFI word list, where you can get a list of potential files which might be on the system, and you could go and put these into Burp Intruder or ffuff or some other kind of fuzzing tool, and see which ones are readable, which ones are not on the system, which ones are forbidden, etc. We can also, let's have a look for high on coffee. LFI. There's quite a good cheat sheet which has some different tricks that we can use here to read PHP files. So normally the PHP file is obviously a server-side script, and if we try to access it, it's going to load the it's going to execute the PHP rather than displaying it. But if we use one of these tricks like filter, we can potentially base64 encode or rot13 or something the file, and then we can then just go and decode it. So let's take a copy of this. And let's change this to index.php, HTTP again, and you can see we've got this base64 encoded value, so we could go to something like CyberChef, paste this in, and then say from base64, and you can see that this is actually our vulnerable server-side code. So there's a PHP file which is saying if a get parameter is provided with a file, as you can see here, file is the parameter which is being passed, then it's going to include that file. And there's no restrictions there, there's nothing to say that we can't specify etc password or anything like that. In some cases you might have the directory being set, in which case you might need to do like, let me change this, let's go back to our etc password. So if we had the directory set, we might need to do some directory traversal and say .. Oh my god, .. You can see that doesn't actually load anything. Let's add another .. Doesn't load anything. Another one .. And now we get it. So it's going to be, if we're in the web directory there, it would have been var www.html. So we've had to go back 3 directories to get back to the root directory, and then we can access etc password. But because the directory is not set this time, it doesn't actually matter, we can just do etc password. So local file inclusion vulnerabilities can be combined with other vulnerabilities like log poisoning, where we could potentially inject some PHP into a log and then include it as a file and it would actually execute the PHP. Or if we have like a file upload or something, we could upload a PHP file, we could include it here and it would execute our PHP shell. Okay, so let's go back and see if our scan is finally completed. And it hasn't. Okay, it's still saying another 8 minutes to go. It's not actually shown any open ports yet either. It's not looking too good. Nikto completed. Let's close that down. This just seems to be coming up with a lot of false positives now. Let me try and access one of these and see what happens. Yeah, okay. That's fine. Alright, well we need to kind of wait really for this UDP scan to come back to confirm which ports are open then. Okay, the UDP scan has completed. It found 2 filtered ports. Note that that took around 20 minutes just for the top 1000 UDP ports with no service enumeration, no scripts or anything like that. So if you were trying to get blood on a HackTheBox machine and you were waiting 20 minutes just for the top 1000 UDP ports, somebody's probably already got the blood. But anyway, let's run this again. Let's do -sv for our service enumeration. Let's do sc for our default scripts. And this time we're going to say which ports we want to scan, which is, oh, we need UDP as well, obviously. Oh, sorry, we've already got that. Okay, ports to scan, we want 68 and 69. Notice that we have TFTP here, which is one of the users that we saw in the etc password file. Okay, so let that run anyway. Another thing to mention is we talked about log poisoning there and a file upload to get a PHP shell up. But if we have local file inclusion, it's possible that we also have remote file inclusion. So let's go and let's locate a web shell. Shell.php, not PGP. PHP, I'm just going to grab this shell, copy it to the desktop, and then I'm going to use webup, which is an alias I have, to basically run python-m http.server port 80, run that on sudo. And now let's grab our IP address. Let's go and change this to say the file is equal to http, our IP address, and then shell.php. And if we go back to our HTTP server, we don't have any hits. Alright, so we don't have remote file inclusion. If we did have it there, we would see that getting a hit and hopefully we'd be able to get a reverse shell, but something worth trying anyway. Okay, so now we need to wait for this next scan to complete, I guess, to get some confirmation on this. Although we know that we have TFTP running here because we saw the user and we've confirmed it, at least seeing that the port is open. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to remove that masscan.txt. I'm going to do man tftp. We don't have an entry, so we can do sudo apt-get install. I also have an alias for that as usual, so I'm just going to do installs tftp. We'll install that and have a quick look at the documentation. This is a trivial file transfer program. User interface to the internet TFTP, which allows users to transfer files to and from the remote machine. The remote host may be specified in the command line, in which case TFTP uses host as a default. Okay. And it looks pretty similar to our FTP syntax, where we can call get to get some files. We can use put to put some files. Notice here that in bugs we have, because there is no user login or validation within the TFTP protocol, the remote site will probably have some sort of file access restrictions in place. The exact methods are specific to each site and therefore difficult to document here. So okay, so there's no built-in security protection here. It relies on a custom solution from the server. Okay, let's see, has that completed? It did complete. It didn't really come back with much extra information at all, actually. Maybe that's because the ports are filtered. That's fine. Let's try and do TFTP, and let's see if we can just do included.HackTheBox. Can we list the files? No. Let's do help. Okay, let's do question mark. We can connect, we can put, we can get. Okay, well we need to connect, I guess. Let's do We might need to provide the IP here. File not found. Okay, let's try and do put shell.php. I don't see a way to actually list the directory though. Okay, let's go back here and see if we can do file shell.php. Do a question mark cmd equals ls. No, okay. Let's go and search then TFTP default directory. Your location to TFTP boots. var lib TFTP boots. Let's take a copy of that and insert that here. Okay, there's no output from that, so that's not looking good. Let us try anyway. Let's do nc-nlvp 1337. We could go and get a reverse shell command from revshells.com. This one's normally pretty useful. Let's just double check the IP address again. Paste this in here, port 1337, and let's take a copy of that. Okay, we'll go back to our netcat listener. Let's try and enter this as the command. No, okay, so it doesn't appear to be correct. Okay, I think the best way to verify this would be to create a text file. I'm just going to call this, I'm just going to send this flag.txt. Let's go back to our TFTP and let's put flag.txt. And let's just try and access that, because I'm just wondering, because we have an equals here to the file, and then we have another question mark and another equals for the command, so it might just be a problem with the type of shell I've tried to use. Let's try with flag.txt. Okay, that works. So yeah, that's how we troubleshoot these things anyway. Process of elimination, try and make things as simple as possible. We worked out that the problem there was with the shell rather than with the directory or the FTP service or something like that. So what we can do now is let's just go ahead and open up the shell that we were using, shell.php, and you can see it was getting the command from us as a get parameter. So let's just go ahead and change that. We'll just go and put our reverse shell in there. Let me take a copy of this. We'll send that, and then we're going to upload this. I'm not sure how that upload is going to work because we already have shell.php. So let me move shell.php to exploit.php. Let's go back here and put exploit. We can't do autocomplete. Exploit.php. And then we'll go and try to access that here. Okay, let's go back to our shell, and you can see now we've actually got a shell. So the first thing we want to do is try and upgrade this, just because at the moment if we do tab we don't get anything, and if we use directional keys and stuff like that we'll get those control characters there. So I'm going to take a copy of this, Python 3 import pty spawn bin bash, and then we can do control and z stty raw -echo, and then we're going to foreground it as well because we've just backgrounded it, and then we can use export term equals xterm, and this should be everything looking okay. We can now clear the terminal, we can use autocomplete, and we can use our directional keys without any problems. So now we can start having a look around the directories here, see what files we've got. You can see we've got this HT access and HT password, which is of interest. Quite often if there's a lot of files here, what I'll do is just try to grep out like pass, do it with case sensitivity and recursively, and that didn't actually find anything. Okay, let's cat the .ht, we'll just cat them all, and we'll see here some configuration. Do we have a password? We do. We've got this password Sheffield19 for the user Mike, and we had a user called Mike on this box, right? etc password Mike. Okay, so let's try and su Mike Sheffield19, and that's us. We have access to the first user, so we might want to go and have a look in their home directory, cd Mike. We've got our user.txt, and that's the user flag. So now we want to look into escalating privileges, but what we also want to do is go and answer some of these questions. So the service we found on UDP was TFTP. Submit the Vulnerability type was local file inclusion. What is the default folder? Let's go and grab that here. It was var lib tftp boot. If it wasn't using the default folder, by the way, we could have gone to find out what the configuration was set to, and because this could have been changed. But because we have local file inclusion, we could go and read that config file and see what the directory should be. Which file is located in the web server and can be used for lateral movement. .ht password. What is the group that the user Mike is a part of that can be exploited for privilege escalation? So let's go back to our terminal and check the groups. And we can see we've got Mike in the LXD group. So it's mentioned that this is a potential privilege escalation route, so we can go and have a look. Let's do LXD PrivEsc. We can get up Hacktricks or a site of your choice. Generally find these work quite well. And we've got a couple of different methods here. So if you belong to the LXD or LXC group, you can become root. And you can either use this method where you install in your machine the distro builder and then follow the instructions. Upload this to add image. Okay, what's method 2? Method 2 is build an Alpine image and start it using the flag security.privileged equals true. Or with internet. Okay, so our box isn't going to have access to the internet, so we're going to need to use method 1 or method 2 here. If this hadn't have given us a hint, we'd probably want to go and run something like LinPEAS or linenum or something like that. They've changed the repo recently, because normally what I would do is, let's see, locate LinPEAS.sh. I had a symlink set up to, let's see, ls home crystal scripts peas linpeas. So I had a symlink that was set up to the linpeas script in here, but for some reason they've changed the GitHub repo so it no longer actually contains the script. You have to build it yourself, I guess, or go and get the release, which seems crazy to me. I mean, what's the point in even having a GitHub repo there if you're not going to include the finished script? But oh well. In fact, where is it? Yeah, where are the releases? GitHub issues. See, it shouldn't be this hard to just go and grab the script. Oh, there we go. Find the latest versions of all scripts and binaries in the releases page. So yeah, it's kind of annoying in my opinion, because it means that you download this LinPEAS script and you have to go back and manually check to see if there's new releases. If they just included this in the GitHub, then whenever I boot my system and update all my Git repos using a script, I would always have the latest version. So if whoever makes this is listening, please just put the files back in the GitHub repo. But anyway, let's save this. Let's copy it over. I'm gonna do copy downloads linPEAS here. I'm gonna do web up. Let's get our IP address, ifconfig, copy that. So this is now running a HTTP server here. We can go back to Mike. Let's go to the temp directory and do wget linpeas.sh chmod linpeas, and then we can run through this. So presumably this would give us a hint. You can see there LXD has come up in bright red, highlighted bright red, to indicate that it's a 95% of the time it's a privilege escalation vector. This also gives some links to Hacktricks based on what it finds. So if you're not sure where to go, basically this would be my first point of call, would be to run a script like this, slowly go through the output and see what's of interest. In this case we know to focus on LXD, so I'm not going to waste too much time going through this, but just in case you come across a real HackTheBox machine and you don't have this hint telling you to look at LXD or whatever the PrivEsc vulnerability is, then that's the first point of call. Okay, so let's give this a go. We'll fill in the questions as we go. So LXD is the group. When using an image to exploit a system via containers, we look for a very small distribution. Our favorite for this task is named after mountains, so that's going to be Alpine. Okay, and let's go and start doing this. So we need to get this distro builder first of all. It's telling us just to follow the instructions on the GitHub to install it. So take a copy of this first of all, git clone, cd into distro builder and see what we've got. In this case we've got a make file, so let's just go ahead and make go install. Let's go back to the GitHub, see if there's anything important here. We can see the commands that we can run here and what we might need to install, so let's make sure we have some of these. And then we have some instructions on how to create container images, although hopefully I think all we need to do is install that and then we can get started with this stuff here. Alright, that's done. So we've already installed these requirements. Let's do... Oh, we already have this as well, right? We've already done make, okay. Prepare the creation, let's do this then. And we need to download the Alpine YAML file. Copying and pasting like a true hacker. And then upload the vulnerable server, the files lxd.tar.xz and rootsfs.squashfs. Add the image. Alright, so we have these files here. Let me see, do we still have our HTTP server open? We do, so we want to close this one down. I'm going to do web up here as well. And we want to download these two files, so let's go back here. I'm going to clear this LinPEAS output. We're going to run this again, wget, but this time we're getting the tar file and the root squash file. And let's go back, see what it's asking us to do. It told us to add the image, lxc image import. Okay, let's test it out. No errors. And then image list, okay, lxc image list. We should see the new image, and we do indeed. And we need to create a container and add root path. Okay, lxc list. PrivEsc stopped, okay, so presumably we just need to start this. lxc config device add PrivEsc. Okay. And then we need to execute it, alright. Who am I? Roots, okay, cat root.txt. Oh, no such file or directory. Okay, we're in the container, are we? Okay, so we need to go to cd mount, we need to go into mount root, so it's actually mounted the root file system. And let's see, do we have cd mount root cat root.txt. Okay, good stuff. So we've rooted that. I think we've missed quite a few questions. What flag do we set the container to so that it has root privileges on the system? It was this security privileged equals true. I think, yep, looks good. If the root file system is mounted at the mount in container, where is the root flag found? So mount and then root. And then we can just submit our flags. Alright, so we also need to cat user. No, sorry, what was it? Cat mic. Let me go back and see, do we still have this printed? We don't. Alright. Cat mount, mic. No. Roots. Can I get into mic from here? Home, mic. We can, okay. User.txt, brilliant. Submit that and submit the root flag as well. Okay, and that has been the included machine. So one more machine to go, which is markup. We'll get through that for next week. And I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. Thanks.